I'm barefoot, walking the hospital corridors, but I stop because suddenly I'm overwhelmed by this awesome feeling of love. It's like light is pouring through me in waves of pure joy, filling the space around me and beyond, endless and infinite. This love is going to change the world. And my mind, trying to make sense of this experience, tells me, you're Jesus reincarnated. Okay, that experience. Let's have some context. Yes, I was a patient in a psychiatric ward at the time. And yes, it was a lot like Christmas. Thank you for asking. That experience happened 21 years ago. Today, I'm a professional comedian, a registered transpersonal counselor, and I'm a comedy therapist. And don't worry, I know I'm not Jesus reincarnated, because I refuse to wear Birkenstocks. Plus, I still walk away from people while they're talking, if they're boring. Would Jesus do that? Maybe. But that's another TED Talk. So why am I telling you all of this? Well, I'd like to share with you how comedy can change the world if you make friends with your shame. As a child, my world felt unstable. Broken home, both parents struggling with life. But we had humor. And I remember this amazing feeling of relief when everyone was laughing, because it meant for a minute, everything was okay. My mum wasn't having a breakdown, my dad wasn't depressed, my sister wasn't crying. So I became the clown in my family. That was my attempt to bring light to the very serious business of being alive. Nobody escapes trauma. Being alive is the definition of traumatic. It starts with being born, okay, the ultimate separation, and it pretty much carries on till we die. When I was 8 years old, I saw a comedy sketch show on TV, and I remember thinking, going to work with my friends and making each other laugh, I must have this job. But as a teenager, I was struggling with the mounting weight of our family's undealt with trauma and loss. Humor was my mask. I developed this unconscious belief in childhood that my worth and value came when I was funny. So I hacked off everything else in my effort to belong. Like my parents, addiction issues caught hold. And by the age of 19, I was so unwell that I was sectioned under the Mental Health Act and put into psychiatric care against my will. And when I recovered my sanity, and I say that very loosely, when I recovered my sanity, I was deeply ashamed. Mental illness carries a terrifying stigma, and the shame of it pushed me into isolation and depression, and life got even more dark. But don't worry, friends. I'm a resilient fellow. I put my mask back on, I buried my past, and I went back out into the world. Now, in my mid-20s, I tried stand-up comedy. But my creativity was strangled by fear. And the comedy scene felt toxic and lonely. But more to the point, I sucked. So I quit. But isn't it the way that our dreams erupt inside us like volcanoes? And eventually, I had no choice but to follow this calling and see where it took me. I stopped running from myself, and I started my healing journey. And this took me to university, where I studied comedy writing and performance. And it was there that I did a research project that changed everything. I wanted to know, could I use comedy as a therapeutic tool to shine a light on my own self-stigma and shame? Short answer is yes, obviously. But before I could even begin to find the funny, I had to revisit my experiences of mental illness, or madness, as we like to say in our family. I had to come to terms with the big, juicy fullness of being human. Perhaps we're not meant to be perfect. Perhaps life gets dark and messy and awful for everyone. Sometimes. Maybe I'm not the only one. And all that suppressed emotion and shame, it needed to come out. So I used a creative tool called stream of consciousness writing. And this allowed me to write without censorship. I free-flowed that shame up out of the darkness and onto the page. And my soul knew what needed to be said. And for the first time in many years, I cried. And then I did something that I've never done before. I began to share vulnerably with other people. And it was terrifying to admit how broken I thought I was. But something unexpected happened, something beautiful. Instead of the rejection and abandonment I had spent a lifetime running from, I found love and understanding. And it was from this place of connection and acceptance that I was truly ready to pan for comedy gold. Life is full of absurdities. Believing you're Jesus reincarnated, that has comedy mileage. A joke works because the punchline provides a release from tension, just like healing brings relief from pain. And when it became performance night, I needed to create a safe space to share this comedy. So I invited people from my healing community because I knew that they could identify with my story because it was also theirs. Well, maybe not the Jesus part. Although you'd be surprised how many people are walking around the earth right now believing they are Jesus reincarnated. God knows there's enough of him to go round. That's a terrible joke. And the normal people, or I should say the people who are good at pretending to be normal, they also laughed because humor promotes empathy. It tears down barriers and creates sameness. Humor encourages us to be open-minded and forgiving. Whether our stories are the same or not, we're all human. Although some of us could be aliens, but again, another TED Talk. Throughout the entire process of writing, sharing, practicing, and performing, I had to be with my shame. But I found it was a necessary descent into darkness, because what I discovered was that making friends with my shame dissolved it. This process allowed me to reframe and celebrate my experiences of madness as valid human experiences that have made my life richer. I want to repeat that. This process allowed me to celebrate my experiences as valid human experiences that have made my life richer. And when I got off stage that night grinning, my friends and family surrounding me, the weight lifted. A classmate approached me and with tears in her eyes said, "Thank you. I have bipolar and I never tell anyone." A psychiatrist saw it on YouTube and requested a performance to educate his staff and bring hope to his service users. My comedy was becoming a tool for change. And then I realized, well, this can work for anyone with any story. So I began teaching other people how to heal with humor. And over the last few years, I've witnessed hundreds of people get vulnerable, open their hearts to each other, and then go on to share their truth through comedy. And the response is always the same. The audience cares. They are inspired, delighted, and empowered. I call this model Hilarapy. Yes, it's a made-up word. 3 things that make Hilarapy work. A supportive community to give us courage and to catch us when we stumble. Therapy to face the darkness. And comedy writing and performance techniques to share our humanity. I want to share a story with you. A student of mine, Mary, is performing comedy about what it's like living with social anxiety. Everybody's laughing. Mary is beaming confidently, clearly enjoying being herself. After the show, Anna, a successful businesswoman, approaches me, excited, and outpours her story. She tells me she's partially deaf and never tells anyone because she's ashamed. Then, with this huge grin on her face, she says, "People think I'm aloof because I ignore them, but I can't hear them. That's funny. I want to share myself through comedy." You see, Mary's comedy had changed Anna's world, and it could be Anna's turn to change yours. It's my vision to live in a world where we're free to own our stories without need for sympathy or approval. If you've ever been through the messy process of facing your shame, you will know it is far from funny. But I promise you, when it comes to performing world-changing comedy, making friends with your shame will allow you to confidently express the authentic fullness of who you really are on the stage and off. Your comedy will change the world if you make friends with your shame. Thank you.